survive in 2022 elections, which is coming up in August this year. Who best to help us analyze this other than Joy Brenda Midivo? She's the founder, Masinde Midivo Advocates and Associates, and also a great lawyer and a political analyst. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time coming, eh?
Hayawi.
Hatimaye huwa. Umeadimika kama waliwadaku, you know, I'm trying to impress my Swahili teacher.
Yeah.
Popote yupo, she feels alifanya kazi nzuri. Missing in action is none other than Dr. Barak Muluka, who apologized. He had to actually attend to some very urgent matters that took place last minute. But he'll be here Thursday, right here on Look Up TV.
Nope.
Show must go on, Brenda.
It must.
Show must go on.
And I'm equal to the tasks too.
Yeah, you are equal to the task. So of course, that's why I say lazima show iendelee. Brenda, there's been a lot going on the political scenes. Today we saw 30 governors. That is what is being reported. Of course, those from the other side, the opponents of Raila Odinga, saying, you know, how is it that it is 30 governors? But let's talk about the numbers. The UDA side says 30 governors for Raila Odinga, 30 million Kenyans or voters for William Ruto. How significant do you think today's declaration by the governors to support or to endorse Raila Odinga is to his candidature on August 9?
First and foremost, it is worthwhile noting that anyone who's a governor got there by popular vote. And so when they stand there, they're not just standing there on their own behalf, but they have all these other people who brought them into office. Yeah. And therefore, you can say that each of them has got a support base of people who actually believe in what they say. So they have a sphere of influence. And that's very important to have that, because what you have, therefore, is you have at your disposal their goodwill, their networks, their facilities, whatever you need to navigate, you can be sure that they will assist. So, for example, you have 47 counties. You have 30 on your who are supporting you. Then it means when you're going around, there's facilitation all around. There is goodwill. Whatever you need shall be availed to you. So it's definitely a huge boost to the campaign. It's a huge boost to the campaign, but will Raila Odinga convert that into victory? No, and that's what I was headed to next. The contrast to that, though, is by the time we get into March this year, all those governors will either be aspirants or former governors in practicality. Right. Because you will have become an aspirant. You'll be an aspiring second-term governor, or if you're a second-term governor, you'll be the outgoing governor. And so their influence has a time, it's time-bound. There's a tick-tock towards the end of their term or the end of their influence, so to speak. And so when you hear the counter of we have got 30 million Kenyans, I guess that's what the Hustler Nation is banking on. The fact that, you know what, you guys can have the poll with the influence, but those are only 30 votes. 30 governors is only 30 votes. For us, we are banking on speaking with the people directly. Now, both sides is a clever strategy. Who converts that into bankable votes on August 9th now becomes the trick. And so there's a balance between banking heavily on the leaders at the expense of the populace. And also when you bank with the populace and not with the leaders, then you see the things like what we're hearing UDA complaining about. Right. Disruption and interruptions, because that time the machinery is no longer with you. Right. Let's pick it up from that particular aspect of influence of the governors, like you said in the beginning of this conversation. It brings us to our topic for tonight, the politics of survival. Like you said, most of these governors are either outgoing or either are now seeking to run for other roles, or probably trying to make sure that if Raila Odinga wins, they have something given to them come when the next government is being formed. Do you read it from that particular same perspective, that there is just a matter of pushing for survival here, but probably not doing it out of goodwill or out of a clean heart? Do you read it that? No, this has been the hallmark of Kenyan politics for a long time. It's all about interests. Yeah. So, for example, Joy decides that she's being a little bit of a headache. You go and do a little bit of investigation, find out somewhere she's got one or two stinkers. If you're a good politician, you have a few skeletons in your closet. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not a good politician. Yeah. And so they definitely find something on you, and then it becomes, you know what, either we are dealing with this skeleton or you're dealing with us. And so politics is a game of survival. politicians are nomads by definition. That's why you'll find people who are sworn enemies one day, tomorrow are handshake partners. That's why you'll find people who in fact, you would have thought that they would never ever even sit and share a table. And now you find them riding in the same car. So because of that, politics by nature is a game of survival. Survival for the fittest. And in this particular season where we're going, the interests are even heightened. Because there are those who might already know that the ground has shifted. Even if I seek re-election, I may not get re-elected. So why not make myself so useful such that if the next government comes in, I can not be left out. Something will definitely be created for me. Or in the alternative, like we saw with Anne Waiguru, you said, you know what, the ground has shifted so considerably, and I really want to defend my seat, that I am willing to make such a drastic jump that, you know what, everybody will realize how much I really want to survive. So because of the politicians' adaptability and their need for influence, power, whatever it is that drives them, then you find that they're very easy to notice where there is an error, where there is an opportunity, and to take even the smallest of margins to try and survive. So that's why when you talk about the politics of survival, that's exactly how politics is played in Kenya.
It's about survival. Unfortunately,
this is usually at the expense of everything else that politics is supposed to be about leadership, about the people, about the greater good. So you find sometimes the myopic individual interests take over rather than what would be beneficial to a greater, larger population of people.
The voter has allowed this.
They have, because there are times when you have seen somebody's spots, for example, and then you still go ahead and give them a term. Like there's some governors who performed very dismally in their first term and yet were able to come in a second term. I mean, that is something that you just chalk down to the voter and tell them, you know what, yeah, you deserve what you get, because you saw in the first term somebody has demonstrated shocking ineptitude, and you go ahead and reward them by a second term. So we're even shocked that they're still inept. What did you expect? That your vote was going to suddenly elevate them to competence?
I mean, let's look at someone you just mentioned, Anne Waiguru, for instance. Let's assume that either by good luck or bad luck, you are on her campaign team as part of the technical people.
It would be good because I'll charge her a pretty penny.
I'm sure she's watching and listening to this, and probably there'll be value for money. I'm trying to understand whether you would have advised her on the same thing that she has done. You know, this was a person who was an ardent critic of the deputy president. The deputy president, on the other hand, we remember the days of the NYS scandal, where the deputy president even called her names and said, wacha kutupatia kizungu mingi na kukatwalk left, right, and center. Today, these are the people who are even, some people are even saying that they could be president and deputy president. Would you be advising her to have, I mean, would you advise her to do what she has done?
If you watch the December 12th celebrations in Kirinyaga, you noticed that despite the careful management and choreography of the entire situation, you noticed that the deputy president received a rather warm welcome, warmer than I actually was expecting, because that's Kibito's backyard, it's Honorable Iguru's backyard, it was the stronghold of the BBI in central Kenya, that's where they're organizing it from. So I was rather surprised at the level of reception that the deputy president received there. And I would imagine that with such a carefully selected crowd and a well-choreographed program, because you have to admit the Kirinyaga program was run flawlessly. Then she must have had the Wamushomba moment of going behind the tent. Because it was soon after that we had this shocking announcement. So she's one of those politicians who would tell you, has listened to the ground, for lack of a better word, has had consultations, and she has realized, you know what, I am already unpopular. They've tried to oust me. They have tried to. So I cannot say that I've been such a good governor that they would have me even if I came dressed in sackcloth. So she knows that she has a problem with her popularity. Secondly, you notice that she made a move with a lot of her MCAs. So I imagine that there were consultations on that level as well, where guys are saying, you know what, because Central is one of the places with a very high attrition rate. Very few of their politicians come back. And we've seen several by-elections in Central that have gone the UDA way. So I'm sure they have noticed that there's some sort of wave that was coming. Then you see what happened at the stadium and in the events surrounding and after the stadium. So I'm sure she sat down and she just did her political mathematics.
Right.
Is it something that may have been gall to drink? Most probably. It must not be easy sitting with somebody who you probably, on a personal level, do not like. You might even despise them. I would go as far as saying that, because like you said, the relationship was acrimonious. But politics is about interests.
Right.
Now, with the deputy president being very keen on keeping his ascension up the mountain on a steady upgrade, anyone who helps him in that quest is a friend.
Right.
Whether or not yesterday they were not a friend.
Right.
And for Anne Waiguru, if you're looking for the silver bullet, that one move was enough to discomfit her greatest nemesis to a level that she left the party.
Yeah.
So I think, on my part, I think it was a genius move for her. It just might clinch her a re-election, even though if you had asked me this about 3 months ago, I'd have told you she's one of the governors who's definitely not coming back.
Right.
But now she actually stands a fighting chance.
Ngirishi, I mean, those moves that she made, of course, politics of survival. Now comes the alpha female, for lack of a better word, Anne Waiguru, joins the fray and, changes the mathematics of the nominations and even the direction that the party is taking in Kirinyaga. And she decides to walk out and say probably she might run on an independent ticket. Some people are saying she might join the Azimio movement. As far as survival is concerned, I mean, is she doing the right mathematics if she's watching tonight?
I'm not sure why she did that, because she had done a lot of groundwork. Yeah. She was the front runner, even if there are going to be nominations. She had the ground, she was the front runner. She was the face of UDA in Kirinyaga.
Invested heavily
in the party. So as far as I was concerned, in that scheme of things, even if your rival has come in through the door, that would be the time for you to beat the ground and make sure that the ground is tight, it's locked. So even if tomorrow there's nominations, or even if there's not nominations, make sure such that even somebody coming in realizes, you know what, if this is the party I'm running on, this is the candidate the people are going with in the party. But for some reason, she got spooked. I have not understood why. And that, to me, communicated two things. One, either she had not done her homework on the ground and was solely depending on the wave to carry her through. And so now the possibility of facing nominations seemed like she might not actually get the ticket. And so to stay in the race, you escape one competition so that you concentrate on a bigger competition.
Right.
But the second thing it tells me is she could have received some information, which is what many people are speculating, about maybe some deal or favoritism or something that had wooed Anne Waiguru into that camp. Now, when you receive that intelligence, how you deal with it is interesting. Either you confront it and just, lay the cards on the table the way the youngsters say, kaende, kaende. Or now you pull such a move in the hope that somebody will come and tell you, no, don't do what you're doing, please stay. But it looks like if she was trying to call a bluff, it backfired. Because when she said, I'm walking, she was told, okay, see you later. Now I think she finds herself in a conundrum. Because without the wave of UDA, if the wave was what she was counting on, without that wave, then she's even less assured of her situation. If she has the ground, and we have seen very popular candidates who had the ground, when they make a wrong political move, and with this I have Kiamba in mind, it costs a very popular candidate simply because people do not like where you have headed.
Yeah.
So I think that's why she's talking about being an independent.
Right.
She's careful to not entangle herself in a mess that she was not part of the creation of. So if I were her right now, I would really be looking at my options afresh. Maybe even switching races, deciding to go for women rep or MP rather than for governor if you're not sure of a win, because it would be very unfortunate for you to have made this very strong run and fail at the last hurdle.
That must be a very difficult decision to make at this particular point.
It must be, but I wonder why her advisors advised her in that way, because I was very surprised by that move. It was one of those, it was almost a rookie error. So that's why I'm saying maybe she became privy to some very damning information. Or she made some miscalculations and assumptions that once Anne Waiguru came in, iliharibu mahesabu.
Right. We hope to host her here very soon. But let's talk a bit about the central region, where there seems to be a lot of that struggle for survival. And we tend to see a scenario where most of the voters within the region, and of course the fear right now for those who want to run in this region, have a fear that the people in central, parts of central, want to vote in a manner that is just to punish the outgoing president, just because of the fact that probably he pulled some moves that they do not necessarily agree with. Not because you are an unpopular candidate, but if you are on the side of President Uhuru Kenyatta, rest assured, you will go home. Do you have a sense of feeling that probably that is what could be driving most of the central region politicians, as opposed to principles, or probably what the strong belief in the UDA? What do you read from this?
Central Kenya naturally has a very high attrition rate of politicians. Like 80% of the elected officials rarely make it back. In fact, somebody like Imani Ichung'wah is such an oddity that he was unopposed. Mostly you go in, you serve one term, unless you are such a lovely person, you rarely see a second term. Or you stay out for one term and then now they bring you back the other time. So you find that in Central, forget about the president and how much they don't like him, forget about UDA and how much it is a wave. Most of the sitting MPs right now, and the sitting MCAs and the other guys who are already in office, know that re-election in Central is an uphill task. So if you start on that premise, then you would understand why people are employing every trick in the book to ensure that they're on the right side of their political calculations, whichever way.
Yeah.
So there are those who've decided to throw their weight behind the deputy president in the hope that the newness is what will carry them through. However, you've had the deputy president time and time again saying about how nominations will be free and fair.
Yeah.
So there's some of those guys, even despite them being, for lack of a better word, city lights for the UDA party, might find themselves falling at that hurdle.
Yeah.
That you go for nominations and you lose to somebody who
was never even part of the
exactly,
brigade
and so
of the
now
deputy president,
you start
rallies.
shedding those premium tears of I built the party and now look, they've thrown me out. On the other hand, there are those who've decided to bank their back with the president, and you, like you said, are facing the wrath of the people because of it. Now, this knee-jerk reaction of Kenyans of cutting off your nose to spite your face is part of the reason why we're in the mess we are in. When you go to vote for somebody because you are trying to punish somebody else, I mean, it's absolute nonsense. It's like trying to eat, I take poison hoping that an angwe dies. It's stupidity. But Kenyans tend to imagine that where somebody is sitting somewhere, they're feeling pain because you've done this. If you have seen anything with politicians, is that they have rubber emotions. I mean, you guys can be sitting there feeling so bad that your candidate lost. Tomorrow you see them, they've been appointed, they're in a board of CG, what, they even forgot that they lost. So we have to, as Kenyans, mature into a sense where you have a reason to vote in a leader. And it cannot be to punish somebody else, because the guy you're voting in is going to earn a salary on your account, is going to be responsible for bringing development to your area, is going to be responsible to ask the questions that you people want answered. So if you go ahead and choose somebody who's only punishing somebody else, and they go and sit for 5 years in the house and do nothing, guess who's the fool? It's the voter.
And it's very interesting because right here on national television, we had a leader who actually in one of the news coverages was very outright in what he was saying. Much as he was calling for Kenyans not to be used, or especially the youth, to be used by politicians to cause chaos, he said a very interesting thing that, you know, wakati, when we pay you this money to go and disrupt people, we are actually paid our salaries, which I eat with my wife, my children, and the ladies that I seduce. But this Kenyan who was in that rally cheering, probably that message did not even sink. And probably would that be the reason why, even with the IBC going in for the second wave of the voter registration, they might still not hit their targets? I mean, where's the problem? Why do Kenyans probably, or most Kenyans, they seem to have lost hope in the electoral process, especially when we're reading from the aspect of the voter registration exercise, the numbers that are coming.
You know, the problem with democracy, it's not a perfect system. It's what we have, it's what we work with, but it is not a perfect system. Because what it does, the majority have their way and the minority have their say. And sometimes the say is not enough. You need a little bit extra so that you ensure that you do not have, you're not out in the cold, like we like saying, you're not out in the cold for too long. In this particular instance, you have a situation where the electorate has not yet understood exactly how much of politics, how much politics affects their lives. So we can say this is a political something, something, something.
Yeah.
But once somebody is in power, they're not just a politician now, they're the ones making the policies. They're the ones making the legislation. They're the ones driving the economy. They're the ones approving the budgets.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are making the decisions to borrow this or to supplement this or to increase the borrowing limits. They're the ones who are making the decisions that have a direct consequence on how much the price of kerosene is.
Yeah.
Until Kenyans draw that parallel, that you know what, this particular event actually equals to this particular consequence, many of them are lost. Like you had in your segment just before we came on, the guys in Mount Elgon saying that they're considering boycotting the election because they feel sidelined. As in, yeah, so you don't turn up to the party, who will notice you didn't come? Yeah. But even if you don't turn up, guess what? The ones who do turn up will make a decision for you. And if you thought it was bad now, guess how bad it will be.
To be worse.
Another thing for Kenyans, which I have found to be totally, I have never understood it, is that we are also fixated with the race for president. Yeah. We forget that the MCA in your area
counts.
Has a direct consequence on if the market women will get that mabati roofing over the place where they do business or not. We're forgetting that the MCA is the one who talks to City Hall and talks to NMS and talks to who to ensure that those local roads are paved. Yeah. He's the guy who will make sure that the street lighting, that's the guy who will make sure that your dispensary is always maintained. Yeah. We are so fixated on the big race that we forget it's the small pebbles that make the big wall. Yeah. And so we don't scrutinize who we are getting in. That's why you hear people talking like, give us 6 piece. I mean, that's one of those, that political rhetoric that for me just, it annoys me.
It should have ended with the 2010 constitution.
Forget revolution. It's one of those things that when you tell people to vote 6 piece, you tell them, don't care who's got the ticket. Yeah. Whoever has the ticket, just give them because it's the party. Yeah. For politicians, that makes sense because they want to have critical mass in the counties and in other places. Yeah. But for you as the voter, you have to scrutinize each and every leader that you're voting for. And that's why sometimes I think those 6 elections in one day, we do ourselves a disservice. We probably ought to break them up so that we do governor, senator, president on one day, where you do the big tickets, and then you do MP, woman rep, and MC on another day, so that you have got closer scrutiny of the candidates and a breaking, so that the MCA is running on his own strength. He's not running on the ticket of the president because the president is still in session for another 2 years.
But party leaders said 6 piece. Do you think people will
No, you think about it. If we do like what they do in the States, if you've got presidential elections in 2022, and the MP race is being done in 2024.
Right. Attention is not, it will only be focused on the MC.
Exactly. That time we will be looking at this game more closely. But as long as they're coming under the cover of you, that's why you see he puts his picture there and the picture of the candidate, the presidential candidate here. Nikona NASA ndani ya amani, nikona amani ndani ya NASA. Remember all those shenanigans. We have to come to a place where we find a way of paying as close attention to the smaller races, if not more attention to the smaller races than the big races. Because if a governor mismanages the little resources that come to your county, it is you guys who've got no hospitals, the doctors are not being paid. Like we've seen in recent past, some counties, the hospitals were running like clockwork. The doctors were paid, there was drugs, kila kitu. Some other counties, premium tiers. We have to come to a place where we start, you know, dotting our I's and crossing our T's as voters.
Dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Joy, this is very powerful. And I'm hoping that those watching us are really taking notes onto this. I would love to hear from you. Why is it that your attention is only on who wins the presidency and not probably that particular leader at the grassroots level who Joy believes matters even the most? What is this obsession with the presidency? And would you agree to that particular idea that probably we need to split the dates and the times for the positions or the elective particular positions in our country? We'd love to read your thoughts on that. Share them with us. Leave that particular comment right there on our Facebook page at Lookup TV on Twitter, and you can also tweet me directly at Amjin Anangwe. Let me read some of the comments right here. Marion Gajuri says, very informative and intriguing discussion. Thank you, Marion, for that. Mercy Shakina Paul, our own Joy, nailing it. You know her, right? You can
Shakina,
say
yes. Hi, Shakina.
Right. Sally Daniel is watching, and she says, great discussion, Eugene. Of course, we're going to take a very short break, pay some bills, and then come back to discuss further some of the conversations that we have lined up for you right here. Joy, 23rd of January, we are told that there will be an earthquake And one great lawyer has actually even joked about it and said the interior CS should actually prepare the country and make that a holiday, because it would be a very heavy earthquake. And Musalia Mudavadi will be making a statement. Will that be a statement of political survival, or a statement that will take him to the house on the hill? We'll be talking about that when we come back from the break. Stay with us. Times on Facebook, he says the blame game between DP Ruto supporters and the ODM clashes in rallies. Is it still on survival politics? It's a very interesting point, because we've seen how violence has been used in these elections, and probably mostly to either weigh or sway opinion on a certain political party or leader or a candidate. We've seen even when any stone is thrown at a certain area, the party that was on that rally, like the UDA rally at Jacaranda, they're saying they want the DCI and Matiang'i to actually castigate Raila Odinga, who was not there at that particular meeting. I'm not saying he may not have been or played any role, but let's talk a bit about how that can be a tool, or will be a tool, or is being used as a tool to sway opinion on who gets voted or who wins as far as survival is concerned.
You know, for the longest time, especially in Africa, we have this protectionist attitude towards political zoning. And so you'll find in many African states, there'll be formulae to try and ring fence some things. So like you see in Tanzania, they'll tell you if the president is a Christian, the deputy must be a Muslim. Is from the mainland, the deputy must be from the island. You go to Nigeria, you'll find the same sort of thing. And then in Kenya, ours became this thing of the bedroom.
The bedroom.
So there are places where, you know what, this is an expertise zone and no other person is welcome. Or even if you come here, you're wasting your time, you're not going to glean anything. So that is why you'd see now people like Veronica Maina having the courage to say, oh, this is Raila Odinga's doing. Not because Raila was involved, but because the area MP comes from ODM. And so they'd be like, you know what, if there's any violence, it's not from the visitors, it's definitely from the hosts who are trying to keep the visitors out. Now, the danger with that is that this day and age, post 2007, 2008, in Kenya, violence is a dirty word. Violence took us to a place where, as Kenyans, we looked in the mirror and we did not like what we saw. And we have collectively said, never again, we're not going back there again. That is why you find when somebody is tagged a lot of violence, or the purveyor of violence, the perpetrator of violence, politically it's actually a demerit, it's not a merit. But in other places in Africa, you find violence being the way people retain power, the way people keep power. So for example, look at what is happening in Mali right now. So Mali, they've ousted the former president. The military junta has taken over. The junta was supposed to do an election in 6 months. Then the other day they were like, you know what, we want to do it in 6 months, give us 5 years, then we'll give you an election. And you would have expected that the people of Mali would be like, no, we want a civilian government, no, let's go to elections. Day before yesterday, the whole rally, they're like, we want those guys with guns to stay there because the civilians wametuonyesha dust. We'd rather stay with the military guys for now. Kitambo, we breathe. So in Africa, violence has been used to retain political power, to acquire political power, to keep somebody in power even longer than they should have been. And we have seen violent uprisings to try and suppress that. We are moving away from it, but it is still capital. So you will find that in places where violence becomes endemic, a few things will happen. You might see, for example, what we saw in Kibra when, what's his name was running, the footballer was running.
Mariga.
Yes, where the threat of violence was a tool that was used for voter suppression. So you find people who might have come out to vote for a candidate don't come out because they're afraid of what would go on. And that's when you see the famous Khalwale meme of him holding stones, because it got to a place where now it was survival for the fittest. What we saw yesterday happening in Embakasi, same sort of dynamics. So it leads to voter suppression. So that your guys have the confidence to come out because they know they'll not be attacked, but the other guys feel like maybe they may not. Also, people are not able to freely campaign. So it becomes actually a means of ring-fencing certain areas.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is it politics of survival? Indeed it is. It's one of the tools that you use to make sure that you stay ahead. Because political contest is a bit like a fight, like war. You employ any tactics that you imagine will give you a step ahead over your guy. And unfortunately, some of those tactics are dirty tactics. But like I said, in Kenya, because right now, violence is a dirty word, that's why you find people have the confidence to call it out. Just a few short years ago, if you are old enough, the days of the forced disappearances, the Nyayo torture chambers and the other things, that was political violence. But those days, I mean, it was fine for political violence as long as it wasn't meted against you. We've moved on from there. And so we need, even as a society, to get to a place where when politicians even look for people to go and throw stones, they should meet, they should find nobody. I mean, and I'm glad when I look at people like my children's generation, the guys who are the current TikTok generation, these guys are doing politics on a different level. They may not be willing to go out and get their Converse sneakers dirty, running and throwing stones after people. So it may come a time when this will die off. But in the meantime, once in a while, there will be flare-ups. There will be trouble.
Right. Let's talk about the OCA team, because most of the times, from the time it was incepted, since inception of that coalition or grouping, for lack of a better word, they were even named the Cerelac babies, you know, and they were even called the opportunists, those who are waiting to be endorsed. So they just want to survive in this political. Some of them have even been named as those who threaten to run. You know, they will not run. By the way, don't be worried. This person won't run. They're just threatening to run. But their space in shaping the August 9th election. I mean, let's talk a bit about that. Musalia Mudavadi says, 23rd, I have a big statement that will shake this particular country. We've seen Malala, you know, inviting or warming up to Deputy President William Ruto. Atuoli, the Secretary General for KOTU, has even been saying that actually Malala is a mole for the Deputy President in ANC, and there's something being done to create a bridge for the ANC party leader to cross over to Ruto's side. As a Kenyan, or as a person who's following the political events, are you looking forward to 23rd of January?
I think the Council of Elders are soon to rescind my membership to the Mulembe Nation. But be that as it may, let me speak by truth. Sometimes I think Honorable Musalia is an excellent gentleman. And he's an excellent economist. On that score, we do not fault him. He has had a few, like I said, every good politician has a few skeletons in his closet. So even him, he's got a few things here and there that he really cannot explain and would not be willing to explain. So we chalk that down to him. But when it comes to this particular race, I find OCA to be very schizophrenic. I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with. Today you meet the happy OCA, tomorrow it's the upset OCA, the next day it's the I'm gonna kill you OCA, the next day is, you know what, we are hugging everybody, kumbaya OCA. You never know what side of OCA you're meeting, because one day they look like they're getting along, the next day it's knives drawn, the next day people are making announcements by themselves, the next day no, we are still together. And what that has done, in my opinion, every passing day that they don't seem to be able to make a decision, they become less and less relevant in this particular race. And what that does is that whatever social capital that they had built, whatever vote base that they seemed to have built, is eroded, especially those who are undecided, who are leaning towards them but who are undecided. Get to a place that, like, you know what, we can't be a part of these shenanigans, we don't know what you're doing. So they move off. They have their core supporters who will be with them come rain or shine. But they're unable to build that core base because they are stuck in this one thing. Are we a coalition? Are we not? Are we running? Are we not? So you see, for example, the very curious thing that's going on, that ANC is supposed to be having the NDC, and then all the others come and endorse the party, the person who the party is endorsing to be the flag bearer. So we've seen that for Wiper, we've seen that for Kanu, we've seen that for Wetangula, we're seeing it for Davide. And I'm wondering, okay, fine, so all of you have been endorsed to run for president. So how many presidents do we have? So what that does for somebody like Mudavadi, who amongst the OCA principles arguably had done the most to build his profile up to a certain level, it dilutes your political capital. Gets you to a place where you look like you've priced yourself out of the market. That's why you hear people talking to them about, you're waiting here to be endorsed, you're still in boardrooms. Because guys get to a place where they're like, maybe you're making yourself up, hoping that you'll be picked up.
Yeah.
But now you're not being picked up, so you started walking the streets. Very crass example, but that's the best I can come up with for now. If he is going to salvage something, whatever he's announcing on the 23rd, better look like, you know what, let the rest of Oka continue their confused shenanigans. I'm gunning for it.
On my own.
On my own. What that does, even if he does not win the race, maybe he'll be close enough to make a mark, set himself up for 2027 or maybe 2032, because he still has the benefit of a few years under his belt. So he can say, you know what, this is a warm-up of me building my muscle to go forward. Maybe the rumors with Malala have got some credence. I've seen a quote that's attributed to Honorable Malala that's talking about, if Raila steps down and lets Musalia fly the Azimio flag, we'll go to Azimio. But if the deputy president just promises Mudavadi a government position, then we are willing to. And I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, what a useless comment. Because what that does, it shows that your guy is really what people are saying he is. He's just, you know, in for the showmanship, hoping for himself to land somewhere. And he's been trying to paint himself as a national leader. Am I looking forward to the 23rd? Not really, because we've been promised a lot, and then, you know, we've had these words before, tsunami, mother of all battles and all these things, and at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a poof. Then after that, it's all died down. So unless he does something drastic, like I'm going for it alone, something totally unexpected, most probably we've been promised an earthquake, but it won't even be a tremor. Oh
my God. I mean, I hope that doesn't, you know, disorganize them.
I don't think so, because they must
as
know
what the attention that they want to raise with that particular move. But far from it, let's talk a bit about also the idea of probably the scenarios of Musalia Mudavadi either working with either of the two touted front runners. Where would he most likely join? I mean, if you were to read from, you know, the crystal ball, for lack of a better word, would he easily survive better with Ruto, or, you know, have better tidings with Raila Odinga?
What I have seen consistent, though this seems to be consistent across all the OKA people except for Gideon Moi, is that whatever happened with NASA in the last election left such a bitter taste in the mouths of the principals that they would rather stop their politics than do politics with Raila Odinga once again. Whether Raila has a chance to make that up or not, I'm not too sure. But that seems to be something that all the principals are like, you know what, even if I want to work with somebody, not with Raila. If I'm working with Raila, not with him running, it's me running. We've had that with Kalonzo, we've had that with Mudavadi. Okay, Wetangula doesn't have much to say about it, but that seems to be a consistent...
Wetangula
the fifth.
Yes.
The fifth son of... It's gotten to a place where there seems like that fallout was so real on a personal level, where somebody's saying, you know what, if I'm working this guy, not under him, he's leaving this thing for me. Now, if you know Raila Odinga, you know that once he starts this as a new thing, he's not letting go. So it looks like the only place where there might be some refuge in terms of joining another camp might be if they join the DP's camp. Now, the DP's camp already has quote-unquote owners. The people already occupying those places. I mean, it's like Midi's principle. There's no room. So if you're coming in, there's somebody you're displacing. And after what has happened in Girishi, I would imagine that most of the guys in UDA are following proceedings very keenly and digging in their heels to ensure that that doesn't happen to them.
Like we're seeing with Malala and Boni Khalwale.
Yes.
I mean, there seems to be a displacement of some sorts with Malala now coming out too strongly versus Boni Khalwale, who has been there from scratch.
Yeah, but you know, the good thing with Malala is that he's such a brave little Turk. He does not, a brave young Turk, he does not mind taking on whoever, whenever, you know. He has that benefit, the hubris of youth is driving him. But the other alternative that these guys have is to now stop playing games and make Oka a player, a real player. Even if you don't win the overall election, because at this point in the game, it's rather late in the day to upset the. We've got two main front runners, and that seems to be like where the big battle is.
Yeah, we seem to be downplaying people like Martha Karua, who still haven't decided which side of
I mean, in all honesty,
yeah.
if the election is coming in August and until now you've not yet decided,
yeah.
you're not deciding. I mean, this is not something that people wake up and decide.
Yeah.
I mean, how long has the deputy president been at this campaigning mode? He's been at it for a while.
Yeah.
People have earned their stripes, they have made their rounds, they have made their name. Look at even Honorable Raila. He's not waiting for somebody to say, oh, you know, old man, we are really thinking you should rest. He is taking the bull by the horns. He's not waiting for his lieutenants to go out into the field.
Yeah.
And that's what gives them the front runner status. They are paying the price to be where they are. And that's why if Oka are serious, they need to couple together whatever, give us who's your leader, who's the deputy, and now hit the ground running. Because for them, at least, they've been in the circles a little bit. But if they're waiting to be invited into this house or that house, they better be ready for political oblivion thereafter.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine if your people have endorsed you to go and run for president, and then you come back and you give them that Wetangula line of, if you go hunting for an elephant and you come back with a rabbit, you will remain eating rabbits for the rest of your political life. So it's the sort of situation where damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But if I were them, the support that they have when they're together like that is considerable. It may give them some momentum, and it may be the sort of thing that also buys you insurance for 2027. You say, you know, I tried.
Yeah.
Hazikutosha, niongezeni sasa zitoshe.
2027 or a runoff, because there are those who also argue that probably they're trying to force a runoff. Is it what you're seeing? Because
but to
of survival.
benefit.
Yeah, because if there's a runoff, probably now they're able to argue out on which side, to play their cards right from a bargaining perspective. You know, now it is not a 50+1, so whichever the two front runners are, then whoever gives us a better offer, then we will be able to go to that other side. Survival, no?
That too. And by the way, I can see why a runoff would also be in the cards.
Yeah.
But when you have 5 principles, that becomes difficult to negotiate. But yes, actually I could see that being also one of the, I'm sure they have a thinking board somewhere, a vision board.
Yeah.
That must be one of the scenarios.
Let's go this way.
Yes, that must be one of the scenarios that they've painted.
Yeah.
To try and force a runoff and see if they can raise their political capital and maybe buy themselves some insurance.
Yeah.
Because the handshake hasn't worked out too badly for Honorable Raila. So somebody must be thinking, you know what, let me try and get myself in a situation where I too could get a handshake-like deal.
Yeah.
And not be as sweet as the handshake deal, but it could be something. Because I'm sure for many of them, it's been a while since they were in power. So you keep calling them Mheshimiwa, former vice president, but it's been a while since they had any real power. So I'm sure they're smarting and they're itching for a little chance to recapture what they've lost.
Could the political parties amendment bill also be something they're looking at to be able to force Raila Odinga, for example, to live up to whatever they will agree on ahead of the vote? Because in the parliament, both National Assembly and the Senate, you saw their troops playing on the same team against the DP side. An analyst could probably argue and say, probably there's something in there. Maybe they're saying, we will not work with you now because you messed it up on NASA, unless we have a very legal process of how we engage. And once that is done, you see them working with Raila?
I would imagine if they had something that they thought was watertight. I think that they thought that the agreement they had as NASA was fairly watertight. But when it came to sharing the proceeds from the office of the registrar of political parties, then they realized, oh, no, kumbe, it wasn't. So they would be supportive of that because that buys them some insurance.
Yeah.
It's also the fact that it has given some window or some leeway to, for lack of a better word, nomination losers to be able to find a footing someplace else.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you're able to delay the forming of the coalitions until fairly close to the election. So it gives time for the formations to change and to settle as they will.
Yeah.
But in Kenya, we've gotten to a place where we are seeing mature democracies are right now, where no one party is big enough to take on the entire election, except like in the States or somewhere. But most of the European democracies are like that. You have to work with others in order to get where you need to go. And so having that bill in place, okay, right now it's a bit of expediency on the politicians' part, but I'm imagining after we are done with the 2022 elections, they need to look at that bill again and make sure that coalitions are better managed. Because truth be told, even now, you might be a coalition partner. So for example, like Wetangula, used to have, Honorable Wetangula has the status of a principal, but his party was playing in Ligi Ndogo, for lack of a better word. But because of a negotiated settlement, you're able to at least find a way of pulling up the prestige of your party, and you've got time to rebuild it. And that is something important, especially for the young and upcoming politicians, because right now the age of the kingpins is dying off. Many of the big boys we are seeing are fading in the political scene. Where we are going, the Anangwes and the Joys who are getting into the field, we will not have the stature of the enigma. There's only one enigma. There's only one Baba. We're not going to get another one of that stature. So the rest of us have to be ready to work with others. So that's where we are headed. And I thank God that we, even as Kenyans, we've gotten to a place where we've realized no one tribe is more important than the others. We have to work together. Otherwise, we are not going to get to the top seat.
Right. Final question, Joy. The BBI reggae, less than 24 hours,
you go back
the
to the
resuscitation process. 5 clear, you know, do you see anything coming out of it? Because some Kenyans seems to have already moved on. Even Baba himself says, you know, a good process gives birth to a better process, and the better process will give birth to the best process. He seems to have moved on from the good process, which was the BBI. Now he's talking about a better process, which is the Azimio la Umoja, which he believes will now give birth to a better Kenya, or the best Kenya. Is it a waste of resources or just a formality? I mean, what are the stakes here?
No, you have to realize that when the court order came out, there are some declarations that were made by the High Court that, if left unchallenged, would have been injurious to the office of the presidency, that would have been injurious, even on a personal level, to the person of the president. There were some declarations that were made as well that would have made amending the constitution a minefield, because there was the declaration that there are some clauses that cannot be touched, should not be touched without certain procedures. So there's those points that have to be challenged on the principle basis. So on the basis of principle, this question cannot go unchallenged. And we'd rather it's dealt with finality. We don't want it hanging in the Court of Appeal with the possibility of one day going to the Supreme Court. Let the Supreme Court pronounce itself on this issue. And so you find that the Honorable Attorney General, in his wisdom, decided, you know what, it may not resuscitate the process as we had envisaged, but it does not leave these loose ends. Let it give us an answer in finality. So for example, can you sue the president for what he has done while he's in office? We give him immunity by our law. We give him immunity from criminal prosecution. But somebody asked about from a civil prosecution and criminal prosecution while he's in office. But somebody was like, okay, can we go as far as charging him for some of the losses that we've incurred? So there's some of those questions. If you leave them unanswered, it leaves a door open that can be exploited for maybe not even in the life of this presidency, but in the life of another president. Some smart person goes and finds and says, you know what, there's this legislation that exists, so this is what we're going to use to fix this, this, and that. And so there's wisdom in pursuing it to its logical conclusion. Unfortunately, because of the political connotation of the BBI, we forget that there's plenty of the BBI that was already implemented in policy, in legislation, in other things. So in fact, when we have the discussion about BBI, I'm like, you know what, even the fact that we call Boxing Day now Utamaduni Day, that is a product of what happened in the BBI process. So it wasn't all about the constitutional review. That was a very big part of it, but it wasn't the only part. So there's a lot more about the BBI that was already passed. And like you said, people have now since moved on from that. There are things that have remained a proposal that Kenyans may want to look at again. So like the proposals of increasing funding to counties. I imagine that conversation, we've not had the last of it. Even in the next, the life of the next administration, that's a conversation that's going to be had. We need more money going to the counties. So the BBI is going to be with us, not in the way it was envisaged, but I don't think it's going to go away.
Right.
You said a lot of money was spent on it, plenty of money was spent on it, plenty of time was spent on it. It captured our imagination for the better part of the Uhuru presidency. So I would imagine that legacy, he would want to leave it tied down as well and say, you know what, even in terms of what the court said about BBI, they got this wrong, they got this right, let's celebrate what they got right. So that's what I foresee. But as you can see, the Supreme Court has also been very keen, trying to limit how much time people are talking, trying to limit how much people are saying, so that we keep it succinct, we keep it very tight, so that the court has got time to articulate, to look at everything and understand and give a rendering in good time. Because if we let the trial go on for, next 3 months, you are not getting a decision until December, because they have to go through all the material. So I think what the courts have also done is important, so that the parties also come and they are very succinct, so that at the end of the day we are able to get a rendering in good time. Right.
A quick follow-up. I mean, which way? Because I'm sure you're not allowed at this point, we can't be able to say. But at the end of the day, for the person who's watching us right now, who was either pro or against the BBI process, what are the things that they should expect? Of course, we've talked about whether the president violated the constitution by, pushing for a change of a constitution that he swore to protect. Which way? Because are we going to see headlines of the pro-BBI saying, hey, tumewaweza ama nini nini, or those who are against the BBI saying, unaona sa BBI tumezika kaburi la sahau? Politicians will be looking for all that to use as part of their collateral to or fodder in their campaign trail. I mean, which way, both for the pro and for those who don't like the BBI process?
No, the BBI process, as was envisaged, is done and dusted.
Done and dusted.
The steering committee has been stepped down. Their mandate expired. It was never extended. The secretariat and everything else was dismantled. They already gave the report to the president. He received it. He actioned it. The courts had their say about it, despite what was done in the county assemblies and in the National Assembly. So we've gotten ourselves to a place where there's no pro and against now. It's just the academic questions that have been left. And those academic questions, all you have is, for lack of a better word, bragging rights. Oh, we were right.
Yeah.
After that, so what? It doesn't change the composition of what we have. So, for example, the suggestion of adding more constituencies, even if we wanted to now, there's no money, there's no time. That is what under the bridge. There was also trying to change the formation of the executive. With this close to the election, there's no time. That again is what under the bridge. So all we're getting out of this is the academic exercise.
Right.
It's just answering those questions, saying, you know what, the High Court made very many declarations that, if left unchallenged, could cause problems. And I think the Attorney General does not want it to be on his watch that they were left as loose ends.
Right.
So is it going to help the pro-BBI, the anti-BBI? I don't think so. Right now it's an academic exercise. And for many Kenyans, even they'll try and follow the proceedings. You'll see after 2 hours they'll have given up, because now we are going to the era of plenty of legalese and case law, because once you go to the Supreme Court, you're no longer pleading facts. You're only talking about the points of law. So then it becomes a very technical conversation. So it's not like, oh, we saw 16 rallies, 15 counties passed it, do you know how many did not pass it? We are not talking facts here. We are talking about, this is what the Constitution says, this is what this law says. In India they've said this, in South Africa they've said this, and other comparable Commonwealth jurisdictions, and as a result, this is our argument. The next one, the law says this. So it's going to be a very technical process, and I would imagine it's just basically bragging rights. We were right, you are wrong. And after that, the rest of the 190 actually don't care.
They don't care. Joy, I think it's time for us to call it a night and go home to our loved ones and enjoy the tea and enjoy the comfort of our loved ones. Asante sana for making time, for joining us right here on Look Up TV. It's been amazing having you here. And of course, as you said, you're up to the task, and we could continue on and on. And I'm hoping to have you again right here. Of course, it's a season of a lot of analysis, and we really, really appreciate and need more of your brains and people like you joining us to converse these very important issues about our country.
Asante sana.
Asante sana. Will you be vying at any point?
I've been asked that question. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who doesn't have, quote unquote, a base.
Yeah.
So I work with political parties on a technical basis and with politicians on a technical basis.
Yeah.
But me vying, I don't know. Maybe Manziwana Kanairo. I never know. Because I've been born city, born and bred.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. We have a segment called Aspirants Forum. The day you'll be able to be told by the ground that you're ready for it, we welcome you right here on the Aspirants Forum on Look Up TV.
That's fun.
Thank you so much once again. Right, thank you. There you have it. We have definitely talked and been able to analyze the items that we could be able to analyze tonight. I want to thank you for keeping us company and, of course, sharing your thoughts. I see Paul Karaoke over there saying, following the conversation, very interesting. That conversation remains on our social media platforms. If you missed it, you can definitely be able to watch it again and again. Share it with your friends and, of course, keep talking. The hashtag is #KE. Let's keep talking. We'll have more of this right here. Tomorrow, I'm also here. Once again, we have another conversation with an aspiring candidate for Kajiado North, and she calls herself the Green Member of Parliament. We'll be able to be hearing more from her tomorrow from 9 p.m. And of course, later on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be here with you, be able to converse about our country as far as politics is concerned. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye for now.